If I had to point to a single moment, a flicker in time where I felt it all shift, it was the way she said, "I'll be home late tonight." Not the words themselves, no. It was the way she avoided eye contact when she said them. As if she needed to lie, but wasn't quite ready for the weight that came with it. The funny thing is, trouble never shows up with fireworks. It arrives dressed in silence. In changed routines. In a lipstick shade you don't remember buying her. And that's what it was at first, small things. Stupid, meaningless things that piled up like kindling. Sarah started coming home later than usual. "Work's crazy," she'd say, flopping her purse down and heading straight for the shower. At first, I believed her. We both worked demanding jobs, she was in marketing, I was running operations for a logistics firm. Late nights weren't unusual. But it started feeling different. She used to call me on her way home, just to chat about her day, vent, laugh. But those calls stopped. Then her scent changed. She switched perfumes, said she wanted something more fresh. I tried not to read into it. Women evolve, right? But it wasn't just the perfume. It was how she applied it. Carefully. Intentionally. Even on days she said she was swamped with client meetings and barely left the office. And then, there were the clothes. I remember this blue dress, fitted, classy, the kind that hugged her frame just right. She hadn't worn it in years. One Thursday morning, she put it on like it was just another Tuesday, gave me a kiss that barely grazed my cheek, and left before I could even say, "You look amazing." I stood in the kitchen for a minute longer than usual that day, coffee growing cold in my hand. Something about that moment, the dress, the hurried goodbye, the missing spark in her eyes, left a taste in my mouth I couldn't shake. It wasn't jealousy. I'm not wired like that. But it was unease. Like I was hearing music in the house but couldn't find the source. We used to joke around a lot, make up stupid songs while making pancakes, argue over the best 90s sitcom, take midnight drives just because we could. Those things slowly vanished, replaced by quiet dinners and her constant scrolling through her phone, always flipped screen down when I was around. Once, I came home early from work, rare for me, and found her sitting on the patio. She was smiling at her phone. Really smiling. The kind of smile she hadn't given me in months. She didn't see me at first, and when she did, her expression snapped back to neutral so fast it made my stomach tighten. "Who were you texting?" I asked casually, forcing a smile. "Just Kate," she said. Her voice was light, almost convincing. But Kate had moved to Denver last year and wasn't exactly the kind of friend who made you beam like a teenager. Still, I nodded. Said nothing. Took a sip of my beer and sat beside her while silence bloomed between us like a weed. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling while Sarah breathed steadily beside me. She always used to curl into me when she slept. Not anymore. Now she slept facing the wall, her body a foot away that felt like a mile. I told myself I was overthinking it. That marriages go through phases. That maybe I was the one pulling away and didn't realize it. I even bought her flowers that weekend. Just because. She thanked me, smiled politely, but it didn't land. She didn't smell them. She didn't put them in a vase. Just left them on the counter like they belonged to someone else. It's strange how your gut starts talking before your brain catches up. And mine had been whispering for weeks now. Something's not right. Something's not right. But I wasn't ready to hear it. I wanted to believe in her. In us. We had history, damn it. 8 years together, 5 married. Vacations, sick days, Sunday morning pancakes. We had plans. A house we picked out together. A dog we named together. A life we built, brick by brick. And now I felt like a stranger in my own home, tiptoeing around a woman who was either slipping away or already gone. But here's the thing, I hadn't lost hope. Not yet. I still believed that maybe, just maybe, this was a rough patch. That the old Sarah was still in there, somewhere under the stress and distance. But late at night, when the world went quiet, I could feel the doubt taking root. I couldn't shake it. I didn't know it yet, but the unraveling had already begun. And I was about to find out just how much silence can really say. There's a moment, it always comes quietly, when you realize that the person sitting across from you at the dinner table is no longer your partner. There's someone else. Or worse, someone you never really knew. That moment for me came on a Sunday. A gray, lazy afternoon. Rain tapping against the windows like it was trying to say something I couldn't quite hear. I was making us grilled cheese, her favorite. We used to share one big sandwich, cut diagonally, 2 mugs of tomato soup on the side. It was one of those small rituals that made everything feel solid. Safe. Real. This time, she didn't want any. Not hungry, she said without looking up from her laptop. She was always on that damn thing now. Even on weekends. I'd walk into the room and she'd shut it just a little too fast. Her phone was the same, suddenly guarded like a diary you weren't allowed to read. I slid into the chair across from her anyway. You sure? I used that garlic butter you like. She smiled, tight-lipped. Later maybe. I nodded, took a bite alone. The crunch echoed in the room like gunfire. It wasn't just the food. We stopped doing the little things. No more Sunday walks. No more game night Thursdays. The inside jokes were gone. I tried once, made a joke about the terrible Airbnb we stayed at in Charleston, where the hot water only worked if you sang to it. She didn't even flinch. Just blinked at me like I was speaking a language she hadn't heard in years. I remember trying to kiss her on the neck while she was brushing her teeth that week. She pulled away, mumbling something about needing space. That was new. Space. She used to pull me closer. It hurt more than I thought it would. I started noticing the language, too. The way she said, I, instead of, we. I need to head to work early. I might go to that thing Friday night. I'll just eat out, don't wait for me. It was subtle, but I caught it every time. Like she was slowly writing me out of the picture. I tried to talk to her. Honestly, I did. One night, I sat on the couch beside her while she scrolled on her phone. She didn't even look up when I spoke. Hey, can we talk? She didn't flinch. Just nodded and kept scrolling. Sure. What's up? I paused. I don't know. You've seemed distant lately. She finally looked up. Blinked. Distant how? I don't know. We don't talk the way we used to. You've been busy. Preoccupied. I guess I miss us. She let out a sigh. The kind that made you feel like you were already wasting her time. God, Josh. You're overthinking everything again. I froze. Again? Yeah. You always do this. I've just been tired, work's been non-stop. It's not some grand conspiracy. I didn't say it was, I said, quietly. But you're acting like it. She rolled her eyes. Can we not do this tonight? I've had a long day. I didn't know what to say to that. So I didn't say anything. That was the first time I felt it, that click. The kind you hear when a door locks from the inside. From then on, I stopped asking questions. I stopped reaching for her hand at night. I stopped waiting for her to walk through the door and light up the room. Instead, I started eating alone. Sleeping on my side of the bed like there was a wall between us. Sometimes, I'd wake up and realize she never came to bed at all. The couch downstairs would be rumpled, the throw blanket twisted. The emotional distance turned physical. And silence became our new language. Even the way she hugged changed. When she did, it was a pat on the back, not an embrace. A handshake of love. I used to feel her heart in those moments. Now. Just bones. I thought about calling her out. About demanding a real conversation. About saying the words that were bouncing around inside me like trapped birds. But every time I worked up the nerve, she'd deflect. Or worse, make me feel like I was the crazy one. Are you seriously making a thing out of this? God, you're being so sensitive lately. You always read too much into things. Gaslighting. That's the word, right? I didn't know it then, but I was starting to doubt my own eyes. My own instincts. I kept telling myself this was just a phase. That every marriage goes through it. That maybe I was the one who'd let things slip. Maybe I was boring now. Predictable. Maybe I deserved the distance. But late at night, I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, and the questions would whisper louder than ever. Where is she, really, when she says she's working late? Why does her smile reach her phone but not me? Why does it feel like I'm the only one trying anymore? I didn't want to believe what I was beginning to feel. That there was someone else in her life. Maybe not in a physical way, not yet. But emotionally. Someone had already moved into the space I used to live in. And the scariest part? She didn't seem to miss me at all. There's a line you don't know you're crossing until you're already halfway over it. For me, it was sitting in my car in a strip mall parking lot, staring at the contact info of a private investigator I found on a message board for men who'd been blindsided in their marriages. I wasn't proud. Not by a long shot. I always thought guys who hired someone to spy on their spouse were weak, paranoid types, control freaks. I used to joke that if you ever had to dig that deep, the trust was already dead. But here I was. Digging. It started with me typing out the number twice, deleting it, typing again. Then I hit call. A guy named Rick answered, voice calm and clipped, like he'd been through this routine 100 times, and I imagine he had. We met the next day at a quiet diner off I-70. The kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tastes like it remembers the war. He was in his 50s, lean, no wedding ring. Wore a tan windbreaker and didn't touch his eggs. He listened more than he spoke. I respected that. When I laid it out for him, the changed routines, the guarded phone, the emotional frost, he didn't flinch. Just nodded slowly, like this was all too familiar. Could be nothing, he said. But it's not nothing to you. So let's find out. I gave him what I had, her office hours, gym schedule, license plate, the usual stops she made during the week, or at least the ones she claimed to make. He slid a contract across the table. I signed it with a hand that felt like it wasn't mine. I'll call you when I have something. Could be a couple days, could be a couple weeks. I nodded, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. The waiting was the worst part. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd jump. Heart racing. I couldn't focus at work. Couldn't sleep right. I kept telling myself I was wrong, that this was all in my head. That I was just afraid of losing her and turning it into a story to make it easier to cope. Then, 7 days later, I got the call. Josh, Rick said, his voice low and direct. We need to meet. We sat in the same booth at the diner, this time his plate untouched again. He slid a manila folder toward me. Nothing physical, at least not yet, he began. But it's emotional. Deep. Intimate. I opened the folder. Inside were photos. Sarah, my wife, with a man I'd never seen before. Tall, dark hair, thin frame. Not traditionally attractive, but he had a presence. Confidence. The kind of guy who didn't ask for attention, it just came to him. They were always in public places, but close. Too close. Hands brushing, eyes locked. Her body language was all in, leaning in when he spoke, touching his arm when she laughed. That smile, it was real. And I hadn't seen it in months. She works with him? I asked, already knowing the answer. Rick nodded. Senior account exec. Same floor. I followed them for a week. Same coffee shop every morning. Lunches together. Walks to her car. No hotels. No kissing. But. He pulled out a printout of text messages. Photos from her phone, taken by Rick's surveillance camera while she texted in her car. Flirty. Playful. Nothing explicitly sexual. But unmistakably theirs. I wish I could say this was casual, he said. But this is deeper than physical. She's emotionally invested. You're not in the frame anymore. I stared at the images. At her. At who she was with him. It felt like watching my wife cheat on me without ever taking her clothes off. You okay? Rick asked. I shook my head, then nodded. I don't know. He leaned back. Look, some guys blow up after this. Kick down doors, scream, throw accusations. But if you want my advice? Don't react yet. Don't tell her. Not until you've decided what you want. I didn't reply. Just stared at that folder like it held my whole life. Because maybe it did. That night, I sat in the garage with the folder on the passenger seat. I couldn't go inside yet. Couldn't face her. Not knowing what I now knew. And still, a part of me wanted to be wrong. I wanted Rick to be lying. I wanted this to be a prank, or a test, or a bad dream I could wake up from. Because admitting she had given her heart to someone else. That meant she'd already taken it back from me. And I didn't even notice. I thought about confronting her right then. Marching inside. Slamming the folder on the counter and yelling, "Explain this." But Rick was right. I needed a plan. Not revenge. Not rage. Just clarity. Because I'd been living in the dark for too long. And now that I'd seen the truth, there was no way to go back. The night I confronted her, the house smelled like rosemary chicken. Isn't that something? You'd think a moment like that would come in the middle of a storm, thunder rolling outside, plates shattering, something cinematic. But it was quiet. Calm. Even warm. She was humming when I walked in. The same old tune she always hummed when she cooked. Like nothing had changed. Like everything was fine. I stood in the kitchen doorway for a minute, just watching her. She looked peaceful. Hair tied back, barefoot, glass of wine half finished on the counter. She glanced over her shoulder and smiled. "Hey, you're home early." I nodded. "Yeah. Slow day. You hungry?" I said I was. And I was, just not for food. We sat down at the table, like we always did. She served the chicken, poured me a glass of wine, lit the candles. All of it felt rehearsed now. Like she was reading from a script we both used to know by heart. I waited until halfway through the meal. She was talking about something at work, a new client, or maybe a branding campaign. I wasn't really listening. I just watched her mouth move. Noticed how she smiled when she talked about work. How she said, "we," when she described her team. How often he must have been part of that, "we." "Sarah," I said, interrupting her mid-sentence. My voice was calm. Measured. She looked up. "Yeah. I need to ask you something. And I want you to tell me the truth." She froze, just for a second. Fork halfway to her mouth. Then she set it down. "Okay." I leaned forward a little. "Are you happy?" Her brow furrowed. "What?" "In our marriage. With me. Are you happy?" She gave a nervous laugh. Of course I am, Josh. Where's this coming from? I nodded slowly. Because you haven't touched me in weeks. You barely talk to me. You guard your phone like it holds state secrets. You come home late, then say nothing. I'm not accusing you. I'm asking. Are you happy? She looked down at her plate. Her voice was quieter now. I don't know. There it was. I think I'm just tired. It's been a stressful year. I've been trying to hold everything together, Anne. Sarah, I said, gently. I know about him. She froze. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. I know about the morning coffees. The lunches. The walks to his car. The texts. All of it. Still, she said nothing. I gave you a chance. Right now. To come clean. She put her hands in her lap. Eyes wide. Her voice shook. Josh. I swear, I didn't sleep with him. I know, I said. But you were with him. Emotionally. She broke then. Tears filled her eyes, and she leaned forward, covering her face with her hands. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered. It started with talking. He understood me. At work, when things got hard, he was there. And I felt seen. Like I mattered. I sat still. Watched her cry. I don't know why I didn't tell you. I thought I could manage it. That it would fade. But it didn't. It got deeper. And I started to feel things I shouldn't feel. I hated myself for it. She looked up at me then, eyes red, voice cracking. I love you. I do. But I've been lost for a long time. And I didn't know how to say it. I stared at her for a long time. And the only thing I could think was, you chose to be lost without me. I nodded slowly. Took a sip of wine. I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. She nodded. I'm not angry. Not anymore. I was. For a long time. But I'm past that now. What I am, is done. Her face crumbled. Josh, please. No, I shook my head. I'm not doing this dance where I beg for the scraps of your affection. I'm not living with someone who turns to another man when things get hard. I didn't cheat on you. But you left me, I said. Calm. Firm. Piece by piece. And now I'm sitting across from a stranger. She reached for my hand. I didn't move. You don't have to fix it. I'm not asking for apologies. I'm not looking for revenge. I'm just finished. I stood up. Walked over to the kitchen. Picked up the manila folder from the drawer where I'd hidden it earlier and placed it in front of her. You can look at it. Or not. It's all there. She didn't open it. She didn't have to. I walked upstairs. Packed a bag. Just enough for a week. Didn't slam a single drawer. Didn't break anything. When I came back down, she was still sitting at the table, folder untouched. Crying quietly. I paused at the door. Took one last look at the life I'd built. The woman I'd loved. And then I stepped out into the night. She called the next morning. 8 times. I didn't pick up. By the time I sat down with the lawyer that afternoon, I already knew what I was going to do. There wasn't going to be a second chance. No drawn-out counseling. No months of working on it. Some things, when broken, don't get repaired, they just get buried. I told my lawyer, Marissa, that I wanted to file for divorce. She was sharp, steady, the kind of person you want next to you when your world's coming apart. She asked the usual questions: property, finances, no kids. It made the process simpler, if not easier. What's your goal here? Josh? She asked. Peace, I said. And distance. She gave me a look I couldn't quite read, then nodded. Let's start there. When Sarah received the papers 3 days later, I was back at the house. I'd come to get more of my things. She opened the door like she'd been waiting for me. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. Her eyes were already red. Can we talk? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. I stepped inside, past her, into a house that didn't feel like mine anymore. Sure, I said. We stood in the kitchen. Same place we used to laugh, eat, kiss, dance. It felt smaller now. Or maybe I just felt further away. I read everything, she said. The folder. The report. I didn't know you were watching. You weren't looking, I said. Not at me. She nodded slowly, then looked at the papers in her hands. Is this really what you want? I didn't want any of this, I said. But here we are. I can fix it, Josh. I swear to you. I'll cut him off. Delete everything. We can go to therapy, or take a trip, or just talk more. Please. I was stupid. I was selfish. But I never stopped loving you. I believed her. That was the problem. I believed she loved me in some way. But she had made room for someone else, and love, the kind that holds through storms, doesn't have that kind of vacancy. I believe you, I said quietly. But love without loyalty isn't enough for me. She broke then. Hands over her face. Shoulders shaking. I stood there and let her cry. I didn't hold her. I didn't try to soothe her. I just watched as the pieces of what we had slid off the counter and into the void between us. Eventually, she wiped her eyes and asked, so that's it? No, I said. There's more. But it's not ours anymore. The move was quiet. I took only what was mine, clothes, a few books, my guitar. I left the house keys on the hook by the door. She texted a few more times that week. All short. All sad. Please talk to me. This doesn't feel real. I can't believe I ruined us. I didn't respond. I moved into a small apartment downtown. Just a one-bedroom with a view of a brick wall and a leaky faucet. But it was mine. It didn't smell like rosemary chicken. It didn't have framed photos of someone who broke my heart. The silence there was heavy. Different from the silence I'd known at home, that silence was cold and accusing. This one was just quiet. Empty. Honest. I spent the first few nights lying awake. No TV. No music. Just my thoughts. The worst ones always came around 3 a.m. What if I'd just forgiven her? What if she really did mean it when she said she'd change? What if I never find anyone who fits me like she did? But then I'd remember the look on her face the night I told her I knew. And the way it didn't look like love. It looked like fear. Like regret. Like being caught. Over the next few weeks, I started rebuilding. I found a new gym. Got back in touch with an old friend I hadn't seen since my wedding. I took long walks. Listened to albums I hadn't heard in years. Cooked for myself, badly, at first. I unfollowed her on social media. Deleted our pictures from my phone. Put our wedding album in a box and taped it shut. I kept my ring in a drawer for a while. I don't know why. Maybe as a reminder of what I'd survived. The house we shared eventually went up for sale. She texted me when the offer came in. It's official. They accepted. New couple moves in next month. I replied, good. I hope they take care of it. That was the last time we spoke. Grief is strange. It doesn't show up all at once. It leaks. It comes back on slow mornings and long drives. But eventually, it quiets down. Eventually, the silence feels like yours. And then one day, you wake up, and it doesn't hurt to breathe. The hardest part of starting over isn't the loneliness. It's the stillness. Because when the noise dies down, the arguments, the pleading, the apologies, the sound of her keys in the door, what you're left with is you. Just you. No distractions. No blame. No one to tell you who you are. The silence isn't the enemy. It's the mirror. And it took me a while to look into it without flinching. The apartment grew on me. Slowly. At first, it felt like exile. The walls were bare. The couch too stiff. The kitchen too quiet. But over time, it started to feel like neutral ground. Like a space where I could finally think without holding my breath. I started running again. Just a mile at first. Then 2. Then 5. There was something about the repetition, the pavement, the rhythm of my shoes hitting concrete, that made sense. Something about forward motion, even if you didn't know exactly where you were going. I got a dog. His name's Cooper, a rescue mutt with one floppy ear and eyes that look too wise for his age. He doesn't talk. Doesn't judge. Just sits with me on the couch and watches the world happen. Which, for a while, was all I could handle. I buried myself in work. My boss noticed. So did my team. I started taking the lead on projects I used to avoid. Stayed late, got results. Even scored a promotion. Funny thing is, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. I was just trying to become someone I could live with. It took me 4 months to agree to a date. Her name was Lauren. A friend of a friend. She worked in publishing, had a dry sense of humor, and the kind of smile that didn't seem practiced. She didn't ask too many questions. Didn't pry. We met for coffee. Talked about books, bad reality shows, how weirdly specific Spotify playlists can be. It was easy. Too easy. Which made me nervous. When she reached for my hand across the table, I pulled away, not because I didn't like her, but because I wasn't sure how much of me was ready to be held. I apologized. She smiled. No rush, she said. Looks like you've been through some stuff. I nodded. Yeah. You're doing okay, though. I think I'm starting to, I said. And that was the truth. Lauren and I didn't become a whirlwind romance. We became a slow burn. A few dinners. A movie. A walk in the park with Cooper. Then another dinner. Then a weekend hike that left us both sore and sunburned but laughing the whole way down. She never asked for too much. And I never pretended to be more healed than I was. One night, sitting on the floor of my apartment with pizza boxes between us, she asked, "Do you still think about her?" I paused. Sometimes, I admitted. Not because I want her back. Just, because she was part of my life. She nodded. Didn't flinch. I think that's fair, she said. It'd be weird if you didn't. And just like that, something inside me nodded. Because for the first time, I wasn't being judged by my scars. I was being seen with them. I don't know if Lauren will be the one. I don't think that way anymore. But I know this, being with her feels like sunlight through a cracked window. Gentle. Quiet. Real. Not everything has to burn bright to be worth believing in. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, unsure of where I am. My hand reaches for the other side of the bed and finds Cooper snoring instead of Sarah's soft breathing. And I smile. Because this silence. This quiet. It's mine now. It's been 2 years. I say that like it hasn't been a lifetime. 2 years since I packed a bag and left the only life I'd known as a husband. 2 years since I stood in the kitchen, told the woman I once would have died for that I was finished, and meant it. I didn't know then that it would be the beginning of everything else. Lauren and I moved in together last fall. A quiet decision. No grand announcements. No Facebook status updates. Just two people who decided that sharing a space made sense, because their hearts already had. The apartment didn't feel like exile anymore. It felt like a chapter. A good one. But it wasn't the end of the story. So we moved. A modest house outside the city. White shutters, wraparound porch, a yard big enough for Cooper to patrol like he owns the block. The first night we slept there, the floor creaked in that old house kind of way. And I smiled. That's the thing you don't expect after heartbreak, how grateful you become for creaky floors. We got married last month. Just close friends, my brother, her sister, Cooper in a tuxedo harness that he hated but wore anyway because we bribed him with peanut butter. There were no speeches about second chances or finally getting it right. There were no mentions of the past. Just two people, standing under an oak tree, promising to meet each other in the middle. Always. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But I didn't. I just felt ready. And I've never felt that before. Career-wise, things shifted too. I left the job where I once buried my pain in overtime and endless emails. Started my own consulting business. Small projects, mostly, helping small businesses find their footing. It's not glamorous, but it's real. And it's mine. Sometimes Lauren and I work late in the office we built over the garage. She's editing manuscripts. I'm running numbers or writing proposals. We don't talk much in those moments, but the silence is warm. Not empty. And that's the difference. Every now and then, I still think of Sarah. Not out of longing. Not even out of pain. Just, memory. I don't hate her. Not anymore. If anything, I'm grateful. Not for what she did, but for what it taught me. That love isn't loyalty unless it's chosen, every day, especially when it's hard. That silence can be a warning or a refuge, depending on whose voice is missing. That pain isn't permanent, but perspective can be. Last weekend, I found the old ring in my nightstand. The one I wore during the first marriage. I held it in my hand for a moment, the metal colder than I remembered. Then I slid open the drawer, dropped it back in, and closed it for good. There are some stories you don't need to reread. We're expecting. Lauren told me on a Thursday. She left a note on my coffee mug that just said, "You're gonna be the best dad." I stood in the kitchen for 10 full minutes without moving. And then I laughed. The kind of laugh that feels like wind in your chest. Like being rebuilt in real time. I thought about what kind of father I wanted to be. The kind who shows up. The kind who listens. The kind who never, ever makes home feel like a place you have to escape from. Sometimes, late at night, I sit on the porch while Lauren sleeps and Cooper snores by the door. I think about how far I've come. How close I came to losing myself completely. How long it took to come back. But I made it. That's the part one want you to remember if you're ever standing where I stood, alone, gutted, uncertain. You'll make it. Maybe not all at once. Maybe not without scars. But you'll get to the other side of the storm. And on that side, you won't be the same man. You'll be better. Not because of what broke you, but because of how you rebuilt.